the immortal John Hancock here, and today I get a question asked from one of my Patreon supporters, Chris Caswell. And Chris Caswell was asking top memories working at game stores, and I have several. I've wanted to do this for a while, and he asked this a while ago. He's been very patient. Thank you, Chris. And so I actually worked at 3 different game stores. I had to think about this because it was a long time ago. My first game store that I worked at was a wonderful experience. Actually was at a GameStop. I know that GameStop, is talked about kind of the McDonald's of video game stores, and there's good GameStops and bad, and I've been to both. I actually had a good experience. My first GameStop that I worked at was in Redding, California. Well, actually, technically was a software etc. And it was great. I was taken on as a key holder slash system manager, and it was during the Dreamcast launch. Wonderful experience. It was awesome seeing all the hardcore Sega fans coming in, buying Sega's last hardware, and it was really cool. I had a good experience during the launch, but I think what's important to know is that working at a game store is still work, and so there was a lot about it that I didn't necessarily like. You had to upsell, you had to sell magazine subscriptions and pre-orders, and it was a cool time to work at a game store. There was N64 was out. There was tons of games. Sony PlayStation was just hitting its stride with some amazing RPGs, and then with the upcoming PlayStation 2 coming out. It was a good time. There were still big box PCs on the games on the shelves. It was awesome. So the good experience working at GameStop was the Dreamcast launch. I will always love that I actually got to work and seeing that launch, and it was amazing. There were so many positive Sega fans coming in the stores and spending a lot of money. It was awesome to see that. That was definitely a highlight of working at a GameStop. Well, it's not what I thought it was. I thought, when I took the job, oh, this is great, I get to talk games all day. And I really didn't know what else to think. I was in my early 20s, and I just did not think about all the hard work I had to do, doing inventory, making sure that the cash register was correct, giving out money, customer service. I was really good at customer service. I was a natural salesperson. But my issue was that I was too honest. I was kind of known as the honest guy, and some older customers would come in, is this game crap? And I would say, yes, it's terrible, don't buy it, stay away from it. And I kind of gathered a rapport about that. Pretty much customers would come in, and I would just be honest with them. And I found that it was just, the honesty kind of went a long way with just, instead of trying to sell someone something that you wanted them to get, selling them something that they just already wanted to buy. And it went a long way with me. I did enjoy it. Again, I was student teaching at the time, and so I was just thankful of having a job, going to school to become a teacher a long time ago. So there were some good memories. Definitely wasn't all positive, and so one of the creepier things that I remember. So my supervisor, my manager at the time, looked exactly like the I do believe the lady from the EverQuest original box art, the high elf. Anyways, she had to deal with creepy people all the time that would come in and just stare at her, and it was kind of sad. Super nice. I'm super thankful that she hired me. I needed a job, and it was definitely helpful being in school and being hired by GameStop by her. Our district manager really didn't like her. Ended up taking her to I had a paycheck issue, my final paycheck, and she kind of belittled me in front of everybody on my final day. And long story short, it was an argument. She was wrong and paid dearly for it. And so I ended up taking her, settle with the settlement, and received a small settlement because of the disagreement that we had. She was not my favorite person. There's a lot of other stories I have about that GameStop. I worked with some friends. I got some friends hired, it's always a tough double-edged sword on hiring your friends, but the friends I did hire were actually really good salespeople that I worked with at a previous job, and they went on, at least one of them went on to become a manager for several years, and so I was really excited to see their success. And again, GameStop, it gets a bad rap, but the honest truth is I'm thankful that I had a job, and I was thankful I was paying the bills. I was going to school, and I just really needed that income. And so as time went on and I matured, I definitely looked at it a little bit differently. So my second job at a game store was actually technically just a secondhand store. It was called Videogame Exchange. It's still around, different owner, but at the time, Videogame Exchange in the early 2000s, when I was dating my wife, it was a great experience. I just had it was an indie store. So going from corporate GameStop to like a secondhand store was like night and day. I was working there weekends. At the time, I was pulling like 3 jobs. I was just trying to make ends meet. I walked to work. I love that. And my boss at the time was kind of a laid back, kind of like ex-hippie person. And he essentially left me alone. I worked there for about a year. Again, super thankful I had a job. And what's kind of neat back in the day is even the secondhand market, and this is like 17 years ago. N64 was hot, and it was I was hired as the game guy, and I probably tripled his sales. Like I worked really hard on the games, even though he sold like CDs and movies. And the truth of the matter is, I was not the best employee when it came to selling movies and CDs, but his games were really his bread and butter. And I did my best to try to sell games there, and I worked there almost a year. And I think the challenge working at that game store was I got pretty good about evaluating stuff and giving money back to customers that brought stuff in, and we'd have to put it on hold. But it was tough. There was always questionable people coming in trying to sell things, and you had to make a judgment call. As long as they had their identification. But it was actually a good experience. That my memories working there were a lot of downtime, and then when it was busy, it was busy. I mean, it would just the hours would just blur. I remember not having many holidays, working every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and then during the week I would student teach, and so it was tough. But I was thankful to have a job, and it paid the bills, and just working at an independent game store is a lot different than like corporate GameStop. And so my owner, the owner of the store, he let me be, and he was pretty nice. He was pretty nice to me. He was pretty honest with me. He trusted me, and I'll always thank him for that. And so yeah, Videogame Exchange is still around. I think that the used game store markets these days are a lot different. And it's tough making it these days. My hat's off to anybody that's trying to make it. So finally, my third story is working at another GameStop. So I moved. I was in California for many years. I was born and raised there. And when I hit my late 20s, I moved to Washington to be closer to my wife's parents. And so we moved to Washington, and we at first had an apartment, and it was tough. It was tough. We took a job that ended up being terrible. It was a social work type job, working with tough clientele, really tough. I hated it. So I quit it, and I essentially the rest of the year was a substitute teacher, making ends meet. I had rent, I had bills. So the problem was during the holiday break, no substitute teaching. So I had to get a job pretty fast, and so I did pick up a retail job working at a GameStop in Portland, Oregon. And oh my gosh, totally different experience. It was just, I think I had matured a little bit, and I no longer was in college, and I just had a different perspective on working retail. I had my retail fill. That's why I was going to college, so I didn't have to work for minimum wage. Oh my gosh, it was just a totally different experience. The people that hired me were nice. The problem was the store that I was assigned to in Portland was brutal. It had internal theft issues. They had to deal with shady stuff being traded in all the time. Essentially, for one of the first days I was there, and this is in a 2-week period, almost the entire staff was let go because of shrink. And the corporate GameStop came in and they asked me some questions. Anyways, I was brand new, and again, they'd been investigating this store for a while. And long story short, I got asked pretty quickly to be a key holder / assistant manager, and I did not want that. I was there for holiday break, and that was it. And I'll never forget when I was working Christmas Eve, and I decided, you know what, this is my last day. I don't want to work anymore. And I just said it out loud. I was working at GameStop, and I was working with my coworker who was super nice. And I just said, I'm not going to work, and I don't want to work this anymore. This is my last day, and that was it. And it was really, it was brutal. Working retail at GameStop, your holidays disappear. You're working brutal hours. You have expectations to sell, and if you're not a good worker, you're let go. And that's just the truth of the matter. And anybody, that's so many people have these envisions of like working at a GameStop and having it be great, but the truth of it is it's work. And I didn't have terrible experiences, but it's pretty run of the mill. Corporate game stores are just it's all comes down to the bottom line, and like any business, that's how they run. And if there isn't hours, your hours fluctuate all the time. Oh, I hated that. I hated going in hoping I was going to get the same hours, and it's tough. I don't miss any of that. So that's my experiences working at game stores. Well, fast forward to the last probably 5 to 6 years. I have several friends with game stores, and I've helped them out, not as employees, but just coming in and just evaluating things or giving them some advice on things, and that was much better experience. So I know, kind of a long ramble. So what are your experiences working at game stores? Do you have any? Do you have ambitions of working at a game store? I just wanted to share mine. Definitely working at a game store helped me with my video game collecting. I want to add that because over time it forced me to kind of play games I normally wouldn't play, and I really over time appreciated a lot of games I normally wouldn't have gone out to play, but because I worked at a game store and had access to them, I was able to play games and really getting an affection for like puzzle games and racing games. I really enjoyed sim racing games a lot more after I worked at a game store. So thank you so much. I know it's kind of a long ramble. I just wanted to share my memories working at game stores, and I appreciate all the people around the world that are watching my videos. I'm currently doing 3 videos a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays at 8 o'clock in the morning. I upload videos, Pacific Standard Time. I also have a Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month, you can contribute to my channel, and you get an exclusive video. And I have a lot of fun doing these. This video was a big thanks to Chris Caswell. He's the one that pretty much got to ask this question and direct this video. So thank you so much. My hat's off to all my fans around the world. This is the immortal John Hancock. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.